This video is part of a larger adventure that explores the Great Western Trail in sections, including some alternate routes. Today is September 16th, 2019, and I'm quite excited to be indulging in my first ever bike packing trip. In this case, I'll be heading to a portion of Skyline Drive north of I-70, starting from a road east of Ephraim, Utah. If all goes well, I will ride about 47 miles along Skyline Drive back to my car staged there. Bow hunting season kicked off recently here in Manti National Forest, and muzzleloader season's right around the corner. Apparently orange vests and blaze orange hats and whatnot are not required for bow hunting season in this area, so I should be good with my white squeaky full suspension bike. It's not the ideal rig for this type of trip, but it's what I got. I don't have elaborate bike packing gear yet. In fact, I'll be wearing a fully loaded backpack like I would for backpacking until I get better equipped. Still pretty stoked, although a little bit anxious. It's a lot of questions yet to be answered. Can my bike handle this kind of trip? Maybe. Can I handle this kind of trip? Probably. Will it be a challenging adventure? Most definitely. Over the next 48 hours or so, as I make my way down to I-70 on Skyline Drive, outside of Salina, Utah. Special thanks to my buddy Tyrell. Without his help on the long shuttle, this trip certainly would not have been possible. Yeah, the map made it look like, yeah, there's going to be a few more switchbacks, then we'll get there. Yeah, it was paved for, what, most of the way, but it's
at least 2/3.
But it's been gravel now for the last few miles. Thanks again for helping out with the shuttle.
Yeah, anytime.
Today's September 17th, and I woke up to sort of a mix of light hail and wind. Turns out up here on the ridge line it's pretty windy in general. I knew that coming in, that there was actually a high wind warning last night, but hopefully it'll mellow out a little bit later on today. The weather's supposed to get progressively a little better throughout the next couple days. I ended up pedaling south down Skyline Drive for, I don't know, a mile or so before pulling off to this old corral area that's just right for getting a little shield from the wind and enjoying the sun coming up and the warmth on my face here. I found out coming in under the cover of dark I actually forgot my sunglasses. So I'm hoping that's not going to be too much of an impediment to me today as I make my way south. Ideally, I'll get down to the 12-mile camping area. I've heard that there's even some toilets there, at least drop toilets, so it's kind of a developed campground on my way back to I-70 over the next couple days. Having enjoyed some breakfast, I'm going to pack up and see how I go. Finally getting to part of the trail that's out of the wind here a little bit. After passing a lake that is apparently the municipal water supply for the city of Manti. No real wildlife yet, except for sighting what appear to be these red-tailed hawks. Pretty cool. I'm definitely a sucker for these predator birds. It sure has been nice getting sweeping views off of both sides of the ridge here. West towards Ephraim and east towards Manti and Mayfield and so forth. And we've now reached the high point of the entirety of Skyline Drive, at least the stretch between Highway 6 and I-70. That also means that it's the high point of my adventure as well. Not that it's going to be all downhill from here. It'll still be various ups and downs, kind of like life. I will be coming up on the 12-mile flat campground earlier than expected, and maybe even push on a little further to Emerald Lake to make camp for the night. Definitely seen a few ATVs, but almost every group has stopped to ask if I'm okay and sort of check in and make sure I kind of know what I'm doing. So that's been nice. With that, I'm finding that it's really an ideal first taste or trial run of this whole bikepacking thing. Even though rifle season actually has begun, little did I know. So maybe the orange straps on the back of my Osprey pack will keep me safe, along with this this big white heavy bike that I've got. Anyways, really enjoying it as I push on towards 12-mile flat. On my way to Emerald Lake here, I'm treated to what looks like a cow path. So I get to test my bike out on some single track while I'm here too. It starts out as 3 cow paths that eventually kind of turn into 1 or 2. But a nice treat for being able to test out my rig here off of the full lane sort of highway I've been on the entire time. Cruised into Emerald Lake around 5 p.m. or so, and I'm enjoying a nice quiet night. There's been some coyotes calling back and forth too in the distance, which is quite something. I've missed the sound of that. It's not something I've heard very often here in Utah. There's definitely the sound of fish jumping in this lake here. Not especially big ones. Anyways, enjoying a beautiful night and already looking forward to tomorrow. Today is September 17th, 2019. I'm really happy with how the straps of my backpack can fit through the handlebars, with the bottom of the pack sitting right underneath the seat. That way the bike can carry the whole weight of the pack on those parts of the trail where I need to push it uphill. It's definitely nice being able to do maybe double the miles of what I'm usually able to do on foot. Today I've got about 25 miles left to get back to the car parked near I-70. So far so good on my first bike packing trip here on the Great Western Trail. With so many sections that are open to ATVs and other motorized vehicles, knowing that I'm able to bike pack sections of it will certainly make this lifelong section hiking project more feasible. Rifle season is in fact open, I believe after September 15th. I'm not a hunter, so I'm not an expert, but staying on the main road and maybe also having those orange straps on the back of my pack will help keep me safe. All in all, I maybe saw 15 or 20 ATVs, with most of those groups stopping to just make sure I was okay and sort of say hi and check in. So I do appreciate that piece of it. There is the nipple that I've heard so much about, which signals that I'm getting ever closer to the intersection on Dead Horse Ridge where I can choose to go on the Great Western Trail route or can choose to continue down the Skyline Drive, which is where my car is parked. Just working my way mostly downhill along the big S-curve that happens near the nipple in advance of Dead Horse Ridge. It's a beautiful day out, less windy than it has been, without a cloud in the sky. Really feeling fortunate with the weather. And my best recommendation is to definitely bring a raincoat that can also double as a windbreaker on those windy ridgelines. Having just passed a junction with the option to go to Anthony's Flat and Salina Creek, just a little bit further south is where the Great Western Trail splits off from Skyline Drive. See as how this was my first bike packing endeavor? I wanted to play it safe and stick to blue square difficulty and not dip my toe into black diamond yet. And the resources that I have show that the trail between here and what's known as the Gooseberry Trailhead at I-70, the trail was going to be more rough. I mean, it does look appealing now that I see it, you know, in its ATV 50-inch width size. But this was really just kind of a shakedown for bike packing, so better to play it safe and stick to the main road. In any case, yeah, that puts me about 13 miles from the other trailhead option at I-70 at the bottom of Skyline Drive. So, yeah, about to enjoy some lunch and then continue my descent down to I-70. And just before pulling up on I-70, I'm here admiring a waterfall at Salina Creek and some changing to fall colors as well with some of the foliage that's happening here. Couldn't have asked for better weather on the last day of my excursion here. after seeing that man-made waterfall on the creek there, I just had to drive upstream a little bit after getting back to my car and go for a dip. Very refreshing indeed. There's something about riding a bike that definitely makes me feel like a kid again. It's quite exhilarating to enjoy, especially those last 13 miles, which are mostly a long downhill with short bouts of pedaling slight uphills. This trip's definitely brought me back to a long ride that I did with my mom maybe 30 years ago, where we were actually doing a loop around San Juan Island, even exploring front country bike-only campsites there. It took me a few decades, but I really enjoyed getting back to that concept that had been introduced to me, some 30 years ago, back in the late 80s, early 90s. I also was thinking about Aria Zoner and some of the bike packing that he talked about doing on the Hot Springs Trail in northern Idaho. I imagine he was better outfitted than I was as far as maybe having some bags on his bike and whatnot, but I'll definitely have to reach out to him and maybe get some pointers on how to improve my system. But until then, I would definitely do it again if it was this type of established gravel road that's big enough for a car or an ATV, like so many sections of the Great Western Trail here. So great success, glad I did it. A great way to spend my last weekend of the summer here. And that's all for now. See you next time.